Welcome to Autism Knows No Borders, a podcast where people connected to autism inspire change and build community. Together with the Global Autism Project, I'm your host, Rachel Harmon, a professional with over a decade of experience in the field of autism services, outreach, and advocacy. Although many myths about the causes of autism have been thoroughly debunked, misinformation continues to take a toll on mothers. Whether you know from personal experience or through an autism mom in your life, you'll want to listen to this episode with Lisa Candera. Lisa Candera is a single mom, attorney, ADHD-er, autism mom coach, and the host of the Autism Mom Podcast. She helps parents of autistic children regulate themselves first so they can show up for their kids with compassion, clarity, and strength. This episode is part one of our conversation. We discuss Lisa's journey of understanding and accepting her son's autism and OCD diagnoses, what she envisions for her son's future, the importance of shared experiences and support groups, misinformation about autism, including recent unfounded claims that it can be caused by Tylenol, the debunked refrigerator mom theory, working through blame and guilt after learning that your child is autistic, how parents can protect themselves from misinformation fatigue, cultural expectations of motherhood, and unspoken pressures placed on autism moms. In this episode, discover what's possible when you shift from blame to resilience. And now, I present you, Lisa Candera.
My name is Lisa Candera, and I am the mother of a young adult, my son just turned 18, with autism, OCD, and anxiety. I am also a practicing attorney, and most recently in the last 5 years, I've become a life coach for autism moms so that I can help them manage some of the challenges that I faced when my son turned 13 and puberty hit and things got really intense.
Okay, great. And we'll delve deeper into the work and how you help parents later on in this conversation. But I just wanted to start with your personal life. So tell us about your son. You said he's 18, right? What are some of his interests and strengths?
Sure. So for the longest time, he is somebody I would have described as very high functioning or high functioning autism, because back when he was diagnosed, the way I understood it is that if a child was able to talk and take care of their activities of daily living and in a lot of ways pass almost as neurotypical, that they were quote unquote high functioning. And in a lot of ways, my son appeared that way, especially in small glimpses, right? And so for years, he was in public education with pullouts and he had one-on-one aids, but he was able to, for the most part, keep pace with his peers. But that really started to fall apart as he got older and the pressures became more. And I think what happened is he was unable to mask the intense anxiety that he was experiencing. And so when that happened, his functioning went down significantly. And even though he could communicate, he was unable to communicate what he was feeling and express himself in a preferred way, I'll say, as the anxiety grew. And so I was just actually talking to him about this yesterday. He's, like I said, he's 18 years old. And he said to me, Mom, when I would get really angry and be aggressive or say I hated myself and I wanted to kill myself, I just was feeling so many emotions and I didn't really think that anybody understood or was hearing me. And so I just didn't know what else to do. And that was just like I've come to understand that over the years, but when I was dealing with it one-on-one as it was unfolding, it felt very different.
Yeah, I can imagine. So it's great that now he's able to communicate his needs. So was that a process for you guys to get him to that level?
He was able to communicate that he was anxious and he was upset, but I think that the feelings were so overwhelming to him, he just almost did not know what to do with them. I think that, like everything else with autism, that our kids feel things more intensely. And I think that happens too with their internal emotional state, that he was always saying to me, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. And someone pointed out to me, well, anxiety feels scary in the body. And that's, might be what he's feeling. And so, yes, he does have much more of an ability to be able to pause and process. But I mean, he also is in a situation now where he has such a high level of care and people and clinicians who really know him around him. So he's really needed that higher level of support in order to get to this point. And, we're looking at next steps for him because he is 18 years old and how we can support him and being able to become more independent. I mean, he's still going to need a lot of care, but being able to maybe have a bit less care as he goes forward.
Okay. What do you envision for his future?
Yeah. So, oh, wow. I never imagined I'd be saying this because when your child gets the diagnosis, the idea is my idea was to outrun it. And he's going to be just like any other child and he's going to be independent. And today, I think independence for my son looks like a group home situation where he will be with peers and community, but he will also have that ongoing support.
Okay. And what state are you in?
I'm in Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut. Okay. Great. So it's good that there are resources there for adults, because I know in some places, especially in rural US, it's slim pickings.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because when I have my group calls with my clients, I have moms who are in Connecticut and, other places on the East Coast. And I have moms who are in more rural Midwestern places. And we're sort of like, oh, there's not enough, for us to pick up with our kids because, the different levels of care are so, like some places will only handle children that have very high level of needs, like, aren't able to speak, high level of like no personal care. And my moms in the Midwest are like, you have places to pick from, right? And, their reality is in order to access services, they're looking at either moving or very long drives that are untenable.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's back up a little bit more. When your son was diagnosed, what was that process like for you to kind of accept his autism?
I accepted it in terms of that I accepted that this was the label that we were putting on him and that this label was going to help us access resources to help him with his development. But I don't know that I accepted it as, and this will always impact him in a significant way. That acceptance has come more over time. And, I look back now and I think I wouldn't change anything in that fire in me to quote unquote outrun autism is what did help me access a lot of services and also to keep going, to get knocked down and to, get back up again. And so I think with this, that acceptance has happened over time. It hasn't happened in one day. It hasn't happened with just getting the diagnosis. And I re-experienced it too when he was 13 and he was diagnosed with severe OCD. I was like, oh no, no, absolutely not. We have autism. I don't want anybody else joining this gang, right?
Yeah.
And so I re-experienced, what does this OCD and it's like accepting the new diagnosis and how it impacted his treatment for autism. That was really a struggle because what we learned pretty quickly is that there are things that we do to treat autism. There are things that we do to treat OCD. And when you put those two things together, it's really the Wild West. We're really just experimenting. We don't really have the understanding of the brain and how these things work together to truly help our kids in a significant way. And that comes with a lot of struggle.
Got it. So what was it like when he was an adolescent and you were trying to balance everything?
Yeah, so his adolescence coincided with the COVID shutdown, essentially. And so it was really not a balance. It was like, which house is on fire right now? And so we were fortunately at home and I was able to be at home and to man him, so to speak. In some ways, I think that the COVID pandemic accelerated his, deterioration. But in other ways, if we weren't at home with me to be there, I don't know how I would have handled it. I'm a single mom. I don't know what would happen with my employment that I was able to maintain because thank goodness we were at home. And so for me, it didn't look like balance at all. It looked like putting out a fire. And so it was like all effort was in one direction and other things were tended to as they needed to be.
Mm, okay. And did you have support for yourself during that time?
I have really good friends who were around me. And I also had support from Ben's own clinicians because they were seeing this child who was thriving and growing really hit this wall where he was struggling so much. So I was lucky to also have that validation from them as well.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm sure, especially with the work that you do, coaching other moms who might sometimes feel gaslit for some of the struggles they're going through.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I got into coaching other moms just out of what I was doing for myself because I was finding so much more comfort talking to my son's therapist because they knew him intimately. But when I tried to go to an outside therapist, it was really difficult because I had to spend a lot of time catching them up. They didn't understand autism is complex. So you have these ideas of what it looks like. And they're like, oh, well, he talks. So why is this a problem? And that felt gaslighting, even though they weren't trying to do that. And so what I really did find is look, I get you don't need to have cancer in order to treat somebody with cancer. And so I don't think that in order to help an autism mom, you have to experience it. But oh my God, it really does help you get to things so much quicker. It's I know that when I talk to my clients, we're talking we're on we've known each other for a long time because we have this level set of just understanding that you can say things to me and I'm not going to blink. And I might have experienced it myself. And that really helps people to let their guard down, feel seen. And then it makes it a quicker process when it comes to processing your own emotions. And then also just being able to troubleshoot with somebody who you know that they're not gaslighting you when they say things like, okay, well, what could you have done differently right here? Right.
Yeah.
Because they know I've been through it myself.
hmm There's just so much power in support groups in general. I think, one-on-one therapy is amazing and has its benefits. But when you are in a room full of other people who really get it,
Yes.
even if, we, autistic adults who go to support groups led by other autistic people, they get that sense of validation as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so interesting because I have a couple of my clients with younger kids and their kids struggle with other peers. And they've noticed that once that they're around other autistic kids, they're so much cooler and calmer. And it's
Mm,
I mean, these are pretty young kids, but they are almost intuiting, you're like me or you struggle like me, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting. And I notice my son, especially with children or peers that might be struggling more than he does, he has such empathy for them and just wanting to support them.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that he is now at a level where he does have the right people around him to kind of lead him on the path for his future.
Yeah. I mean, we are beyond lucky.
Hey, Rachel here. I'd like to thank one of our listeners, Izzy0826, for reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts. They said, "Thank you for having conversations that will help people grow and think beyond stigmas and misinformation. Thank you for the kind words. 5-star reviews like yours help us to continue spreading autism awareness and acceptance around the world. If, like Izzy, you're finding value in Autism Knows No Borders, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And now, back to the conversation." Okay, Lisa, I want to switch gears and talk about misinformation. So you've spoken about the harm caused by misinformation, like headlines linking autism to Tylenol use, which is, essentially blaming moms for their child's autism. What was your reaction to that specific news piece and what did it bring up for you?
Sure. So for me, it wasn't so much the linking of the Tylenol itself, because let's just say that that's possible, right? Let's just say, in a world where maybe there is something that we've ingested that has impacts or that could contribute. Okay. Let's just say that that's true. There is a way of messaging that does not put the onus on the mother the way that this did. And that really I was expecting them to come out and say something about Tylenol because that was the lazy response. That information had already been out there. There had been lawsuits about it. And so to say, hey, we're going to figure out the cause for autism in 6 months and be like, oh, well, there's this other thing that people have already said. So we're just going to latch onto that. That's what I expected. And I didn't love it, but that's what I expected. But when there was the whole messaging about moms and toughing it out, I think that's just, I lost my mind on that. Like that was just so, here's what I do have to say what I liked about it. And I know this is a little bit crazy, is that as moms, we suspect this. We do suspect that people blame us. We do suspect that people look at us and think, what did you do? And that just was almost like confirmation of like, yes, that is absolutely what is happening. And so it brought back so many dark memories for me because I remember when my son was diagnosed. I mean, the refrigerator mom theory has been debunked, but that means not that much. Like it's still out there.
Can you explain that just for people who might not be familiar?
Sure. So this was a theory that was out there for some time and it has been debunked, but the idea was that autism was caused by mothers who were cold or disconnected from their children. Now, when you have a child who is not connected to you or doesn't want you to hold them or touch them or won't look at you, and you are already feeling so helpless. And so to add on this idea and like you caused that is so damaging. And I have a couple of clients who went through, had pretty rough bouts of postpartum, post pregnancy, and they really believe that that's why their child is autistic because they weren't as available to their child in that moment or that they could have been available in a different way. And so just because something is debunked, it's in the air and it's among the questions that you're asked. When you go into the doctor's office, like you're asked a lot of different questions that kind of are on the fringe of, or sort of like, around that. And so I think that the idea that the mom is to blame has been out there in some way or shape or form forever. And this just was highlighting it and punctuating it. And, some people are like, oh, well, it's not really blaming the moms and things like that. It's like, no, the way that this will work out, the way that this will play out in day-to-day life for the moms of especially the kids who get diagnosed now and going forward, there's going to be that question. Did you take Tylenol? What did you do? And of course, that's always a question that we're posing to ourselves, like wondering if there was something, that's like the human condition is like you want to find the reason for the thing. But if the reason for the thing is that you did something wrong and it's your fault, so many moms carry that with them in a really real way. And it undermines their ability to make decisions and really to trust themselves for the long term. And even if they're not consciously thinking of it, like when I think it's like some of this is just so cultural and it's so embedded in the way that we think about moms and children that you don't have to have someone saying, hey, moms, tough it out to know. But that for sure did definitely, again, highlight like, yeah, that is but what people are wondering. What did you do to cause this? What could you have done differently?
Yeah. And so how do you work with moms out of that blame mentality?
It's a really good question because I have worked with several moms who had very strong beliefs about what caused their child's autism, from where they worked to where they lived to the vaccinations and everything in between. It was never just one thing. Postpartum was another. And just really letting them just process that and just explain to me out loud why they believe that. And sometimes as they explain it, they're able to say, yeah, but that really doesn't make sense for this reason. Or now looking back, I don't know if I would have made a different decision because of X, Y, or Z. And so they're able to, process it out loud. And sometimes that helps sort of untangle some of these beliefs just a little bit. And then another thing that I like to talk to them about is what if you're wrong? Because you don't know. There is no litmus test that's going to tell you that this is 100%. How would you treat yourself differently? What would be different for you? And just having them explore that little by little. It has never happened in one session, but over several sessions of just these kinds of conversations, I have had clients who have been like, you know what? Maybe, but also all of these things and just being able to unwind that bit by bit. Another thing I like to talk to them about is that there is a strange comfort in being able to blame yourself because autism is so uncertain. And the idea that like, if I caused this, then I need to fix it. Like there's something in there that protects us from the actual grief that we're feeling. And we would rather feel anger and self-blame than feel just that raw grief. And sometimes
Uh-huh.
it's protecting us from that. And so I always work with them to explore that as well.
Right. And I guess, I've heard people say also that if there is like a culprit, if they can kind of point the finger at what it is, there could be a cure on the other side.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I completely get it. Look, I don't know what causes it. And I am not here to say that certain things don't exacerbate it in certain people. I think it's a soup and we don't know how it interacts. The randomness of it, when I think of it, is like I am one of three children and my youngest sister is autistic. She has three children. None of them are autistic. My sister and I, who are not autistic, both have autistic children.
Mm.
And, we all vaccinated. And so again, I'm not saying anything for or against any of that, but what causes it? I don't know. Right. And I don't know that we know. And I think for the most part, it's like once you're here, it's like, okay, it doesn't matter anymore
Right.
of what causes it. Like this is the going forward. And that's the other thing I really was turned off by the whole Tylenol messaging because the other message could have been like, hey, we suspect that this medication that was government approved and you were permitted to ingest may have impacted you and your child. And here's what we're going to do to right that wrong or to support the families going forward who are dealing with this now. And there was none of that. It was just like, hey, mom, don't take Tylenol. That's how we're going to move forward from autism.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the best way for parents to protect their mental health from misinformation fatigue that's going around?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think constraint. In the age that we live right now, you're going to get information whether you want it or not, somehow, some way, right? It's not like, back in the day where like, unless you read the newspaper or like watch the 6 o'clock news that you are going to know a thing. Here, it's everywhere. And so I think you have to be really ruthless how you consume information, how much of it you consume, where you consume it from, and when enough is enough. And so for me, that looks like, that I would only consider information maybe from certain sources, or that I'm not getting my information from a Facebook group or an Instagram or a TikTok. Like, I think you need to do your own due diligence and get clear on like what your next steps are. And I think that there is a lot of benefit and just going down a path, investigating it for yourself, and then making decisions, right? Because there's always going to be so many other things that you coulda, shoulda, maybe do. And you can't do them all. And so I remember when my son was first diagnosed, we were exploring both ABA and RDI. And I determined pretty quickly that RDI was 100% not going to work for our family.
RDI, sorry, can you clarify?
I got to tell you, I don't even remember what it stands for at this point, but it had to do with recording yourself and your child and their behaviors. It was just like, it was a very intensive types of therapy for the parent to administer. And that wasn't going to work with, two working parents and things like that. And so that was like one of those things where it was like, that's over here. Like it doesn't exist to me anymore because we're not going to do it. We can't do it. Or we've determined that we're not going to do it. And so this is the path that we're going on. We're going to investigate this. And so when I hear, oh, we're having great success with RDI, amazing. We're not doing that. Right. And not to be rigid about it, but just to like, we already did our due diligence. We liked our reasons for not going down that path. And now we're going to explore this. And that sort of focus really helped me in just crowding out the noise because I was around people who were doing all kinds of things and maybe it was helpful for them, maybe it wasn't, but I also knew what our limitations were in terms of our finances, our home situation and things like that, that we weren't going to be able to do all of these things. And then when you add in my husband at the time and then co-parent after that, we had really different ideas. And so if you can't come to an agreement, then you're not going to do the medication or the RDI or whatever the treatment might be. So getting really realistic. Like when I teach my clients about how to make decisions, it's like, okay, what are your options? And then what's actually possible or realistic for you and your family? And then going from there. And then just everything else just sort of like it goes away at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great kind of matrix to follow when trying to get rid of distractions.
Yeah. And I'm just going to give you an example. There have been a couple of times where we've been exploring schools for outplacement for my son. And there have been ones that I have, so we say like we have 5 schools to choose from. And the way I started were like, okay, first of all, what's possible? Now, some of these schools were an hour away. I know for my child, being on a school bus for more than 15 minutes isn't going to happen. So those schools were automatically eliminated, right? And so that was just a really helpful way. And then, okay, what's left? What are my non-negotiables? What must this school have? Okay, now we're down to 2. And at that point, it's a much easier place to make a decision from.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm sure there's just so many extra decisions to make for an autism mom.
Yeah, you get I like decision fatigue for sure. Actually, this happened to me this week. I got an email from the school about the different types of shots that they wanted to give my son. And we have a surgery for him coming up. And I was like, I can't right now. Like, just,
Yeah.
I can't. Like,
Yeah.
right now, I'm just focused on this. And I can't even, like, I'll think about his IEP meeting and, his fall vaccinations another day. I'm just focused on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some of the unspoken pressures that autism moms experience that maybe are not so talked about commonly?
I think that we experience that readily aren't readily noticeable maybe from the outside, but I think we all experience this idea of like we should be doing more,
Mm.
right? That there's no idea of downtime, that we always need to be doing something productive in order to help our child advance towards the next milestone, the next goal. And so always like, should I be doing more therapy? Should I do a different type of therapy? Should we be trying new things? I think that that's always something that parents are wrestling with. Like, for instance, one of my clients, she had an IEP last week and she was going into the IEP meeting. She's like, yeah, I feel good. I feel like we're all like on the same page about a couple things. And, but maybe I'm missing something, right? That's where she went. And I'm like, or you can trust yourself, right? But it's this idea like, well, maybe I can ask for more. I'm like, you could, but for who? Is it for your child or is it for you to feel better or to like regret proof a decision to be like, guys, I have so many parents who are like, maybe I should have asked for more of this. Maybe I should have done more of this. And yeah, I mean, those are things to consider, but I think a lot of it comes from this idea that we have to max out everything because that's the only way that our child is going to thrive. And I have found the opposite. Like my kid needs a lot of downtime and time to process in order for anything to be effective. So yeah, you can load him up and you are going to reach the point of diminishing returns really quickly. And you're going to turn him off to wanting to do the thing because it's not enticing at all to him anymore, right? It becomes drudgery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good advice, I think, to really look at your child individually and see what's important to them in their situation.
100%.
Could you talk a little bit more about this idea of tough it out? Sometimes there's this narrative of the selfless caregiver, what defines a good mom. And I mean, I'm a new mom myself. And so I totally understand, even with what you're saying about like, do it more or do more. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not feeding her enough variety of solids, or I'm not giving her enough opportunity to practice standing. And I'm wondering, does this just come with the territory, of being a mother?
I think in some ways it does, but not because it's innate to us as humans. I think there's just a lot of societal and cultural expectations that we've all lived around. We have mothers. We've lived around mothers. We've seen other mothers. We watch TV, right? I think that there is all of this pressure that we put on ourselves and the idea of like somebody else knows better and is doing it better. And I don't want to fall short. And so I think, it's fueled by love, but I think it's sustained by this fear of not enoughness. And so that's why I think it's really important for us as moms to decide ahead of time, what is enough in this situation? And then to be able to stand by our decisions, or at the very least, because it's not like the idea of like you make a decision and you never evaluate your own decision, because of course you do, and you might course correct, but you're not doing it from a place of self-blame. Instead, you're doing it from a place of trust in yourself and, being able to evaluate. Because one of the things I try to talk to my clients about, and I try to do this myself, is like, there are no perfect decisions, but I'm going to make a decision based on reasons that I like. And I'm going to have my own back if that doesn't work out, so that I can smoothly transition to what the next thing is. And so maybe it's in, picking a school for my son or trying a new medication. Maybe this medication doesn't work out, but I'm not going to blame myself in a way that makes it impossible for me to make the next decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for tuning in to Autism Knows No Borders. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and come back next Thursday for part 2 of my conversation with Lisa, where she gives some tips for staying calm and grounded when your autistic child is stressed. Thanks for listening. Take care.